friends. Welcome back to another edition of the Amber May Show. I just love spending this time with you each and every time you tune in. Today I am joined by PowerGirl. She's a friend of mine, and she's sharing her heartbreaking story of what she's gone through working for PG&E, a job she absolutely loved. She was really good at it, but then, there's some abuse that happens sometimes on the workforce. And if you've ever experienced a hardship at the workforce, then you're going to be able to understand what she's going through. So she's going to explain her journey of what happened when she was just trying to tell the people at PG&E, hey, there's some safety issues and we need to take care of it. This is on the show. You're going to hear about what happened to her and the PTSD that came from just trying to make her place a safer environment to work at, because safety was important. That's coming up on the show today. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe. Please share this far and wide. Join me on Telegram. I always add more content there. Please join me at The Amber May Show. You can find me at True Social Amber May, Frank Social Amber May. You can find me on Clout Hub. And I'd really love to carry more of the conversation there. If you believe in what I'm doing, please consider becoming an angel investor. The easiest way to do that is going to the website at theambermayshow.com. Click the donate button and donate whatever you think you could donate to the show. You can also become a $5 monthly subscriber by visiting theambermayshow.locals.com. I appreciate your support. It means the world to me. Hey, right now I have PowerGirl joining me, so stay tuned. Well, like I told you, I'm so excited that you are here because my gal pal PowerGirl is joining us today. Welcome, PowerGirl, to the program. I'm so glad to have you.
Thank you, Amber. I really appreciate being here. I really appreciate everything that you're doing. You have such an incredible cachet of hard-hitting interviews, and I just feel incredibly honored to be a part of it. Thank you for having me.
Yes, this is going to be exciting because people know PG&E from the movie Erin Brockovich, and you worked for the company, and there's so much that you're going to uncover and share with us today. So I don't know, where should we start? Where do you want to start with your story?
Well, I mean, that is always the question. This is a huge elephant, and there's several reasons why I'm speaking up in this way. So that's probably the best place to start, really, is at the beginning. I'll just tell you briefly a little bit of my background. That's how we qualify in my field of expertise, which is on one hand, information technology and transfer specifically, and on the other hand is natural gas, specifically emergency response. So that's my background. That's my professional background. But before that, I was a California native, born in San Francisco, raised in the Bay Area, mostly on the East Bay, single mom, came from, a complicated background, but didn't stop me from being a very successful tradeswoman. I began my utility trade pursuit in early 2001 when 9/11 happened.
Wow.
As a mother of two with no, a parental or, paternal support, I was looking for something. As I put it, I was looking for a man's wallet. I needed to pay Bay Area rents and pay for daycare, and I needed, a man's job. And I have the frame to do that work. I have the mind to do that work. And frankly, I was going crazy in the office. I worked in inside sales and plumbing for several years and just was going nuts in the office. So I called up my buddy and I said, dude, get me out of this office. I'm one of those people that can't sit still. Mm-hmm. And he said, can you climb poles? And I said, I will do anything. I will do anything.
Did you clarify that for a second? Because that could be taken in a whole different way.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry. Yes, utility poles. So I called up my buddy. That's a very good point. Thank you.
Midnight on the poles.
I know, right. So yes, exactly. And again, utility workers, so my mind goes right there. So you're in my wheelhouse now. But no, seriously. So I called up my buddy from literally from childhood who worked for cable. At the time it was AT&T broadband, and later on became Comcast, and so that's what I meant, utility poles. He said, "Can you climb utility? Are you willing to climb utility poles?" Because that was what his group did. He's a supervisor for the cable company, and one of my best friends growing up, and yeah, I was willing to do that because I just had to get outside of the office. It's not my environment's not my cup of tea, and I found that I madly fell in love with the utility business, working on my own in my own truck and my own terms, and so did that for 20 years, and it was a lot of fun. I did it in San
Wow.
Francisco, so I got to see I got to get a very intimate awareness of San Francisco before it turned into what it is today.
Wow.
And it was, I can tell you that it was
Give
an
my
absolutely beautiful
viewers.
city. But yeah, so San Francisco is very dear to me. I went there for many years to visit family. It was just over the bay. And it was I mean, for those of us who are from San Francisco,
Mhm.
especially those of us who were born and are native to San Francisco specifically, and I would say even the peninsula where I did utility work, there is such a magic about it. It has it's a small town compared to New York. Within the last few years have been to New York, and New York is gorgeous. New York is something else, not anymore. But when I went to New York, I, again, just caught it right before it went downhill. And these two cities are completely different, but they both have the same amount of magic, but totally different. San
Mhm.
Francisco has more of a towny feel. Maybe the boroughs feel that way in New York, but in San Francisco, what I notice about the utility workers, and look, if you want to know a city or an area, the utility workers are the best people to ask. Those utility workers, they know the best places to eat.
Yeah.
They know where all the best neighborhoods are. This is the heart and blood, of not just your immediate area, but the country, are the utility workers. And that's the biggest reason why I'm doing what I'm doing, because they, until PowerGirl came along, didn't have much of an outside
Mhm.
voice. Yeah, it was the beautiful area. I never in a million years thought I would leave it, and what's happened to it um, is absolutely a crying shame, and the biggest
Is
reason
it
why I'm
is it
standing up.
true that there's like people defecate all over the streets? Like they go to the bathroom right on the streets and stuff. Is that true?
Well, apparently the UN wants to make we could that's a whole nother subject, but yes, that is absolutely true. And ironically, and I was just telling Gary, my better half, that you know, um ironically it's the high rent district. I mean, these people are
Yeah.
paying like a phenomenal amounts of money to live in these areas, and now they're riddled. So I don't even know how this is going to work out. That's why I always have a great giggle when I see Gavin groveling in Florida, because I just don't see it. I just don't see it. I don't see how he can even have aspirations.
See, when I was in San Diego last summer, I noticed a big difference this last summer versus times in the past. Homelessness went up tremendously. It was like filthy, more garbage. It just looked run down. That whole Southern
And
Cal
San
area
Diego
looked
is such a
very.
cool area.
And it is a cool area. Arizona people love San Diego. We like to go and escape and have that ocean just like a few hours away with a
Hmm.
70-degree temperature. But I went this last time and I'm just like, wow, it's gone downhill since I've been here a couple years prior. It just broke my heart.
It's a crying
So,
shame.
yeah,
It
it
is. And
really is.
California, as a California girl, I mean, look, when I was a utility worker, I worked all over the Bay Area, down in the South Bay, East Bay, West Bay, even the North Bay. And as an instructor, I worked all the way up to from Eureka to Bakersfield and back again. So I have, I am somebody who knows this territory very, very well. I was also, again, a kid that had a hard time sitting still. So as soon as I could drive all over we used to go to Santa Cruz. We went to San Francisco. I mean, I had some of the greatest memories. And as a teenager, in the heavy metal scene in the Bay Area. I mean, it was just growing up as a California girl used to be something you were proud of, and it used to be something that it was almost like you were a step ahead above or whatever.
Hmm.
It's not that way anymore. We've become a laughing stock, and it's frightening. So I that's one of the biggest reasons why I'm doing what I'm doing, because I do have a very unique perspective. I do have the training to do it. That's the biggest reason. And basically I am, as I said in the beginning, cancel California cancel culture at the behest of my employer, who is still currently my employer, is trying to erase Christina Gers, and that is not something that I'm going to allow,
All right, so
because
let's dive into that. So you're
yeah,
working at the you're working doing cables for
right,
the cable company, and then somehow you got transitioned into working for
into
PG&E.
PG&E. Yeah,
How did
so
that
that's a
work
great question. So it just so happened that, cable wasn't paying enough money for me to be able to survive on a single income in the Bay Area. So I was constantly looking for something, like I said, that was, more fortifying, something that, can create a step up. I knew that I had the talent. I knew I had the gumption and the work ethic to do, something. And so we happened to be heading up to Santa Rosa. That was one of our favorite memories, actually. I still talk to one of my old buddies, and we love that trip. But we were heading up to Santa Rosa. Somebody said, "Hey, did you know PG&E was hiring meter readers?" And I was like, "Hey, that's an idea." Again, growing up in California, PG&E had always had a reputation. I always kind of saw them as a king of California. I'll never forget the
Even
time.
after the whole movie thing with Julia Roberts, even after that, they saw a
Oh
good
yeah.
reputation.
Yeah. I mean, again, you have to remember that the movies are one thing, but then, living in it is another thing. And the thing and this is again one of the things I'm so glad you're such I love your interviewing, because this really pinpoints something that's very important. Utility workers, we are a different breed, because we're the kind of people that you don't think about until something is wrong.
True.
And there are actually some of the hardest working people. And so in reality, like on TV, maybe on the screen, but they're the bad guy. But in reality, for a lot of neighborhoods that have been in a outage situation or in a natural disaster situation, PG&E comes in and really gets the job done. So that is the reputation that we had as a company, before things really started to go downhill. So,
Okay.
and I would pinpoint that moment as being the San Bruno explosion.
Tell us
And I
about
don't,
that. From those of us not in that area, we don't really know what that means.
so basically what happened was in September of 2010, up on the hill in San Bruno, California, which just so happened to be well established police and fire neighborhood, there was a transmission line that exploded. So, and again, we're going to get through the symptoms. We can do this. So, the reason why you might notice my body is reacting to this is because I was a first responder in the area for that event. So,
Wow.
I was not there the night that happened. I had actually just taken a day shift. So, I would have been there the night that it happened, but I was now working a day shift just a couple months before, had taken a day shift. But that was my territory. And at the time, I was a safety chair for that whole area. So that would be the whole San Francisco peninsula, 3 yards included. I was the safety chair. So it really hit home for me because I was there in ground zero. I wasn't there the night of the event. I'm sure that would have been way more than I could have taken, because the following 10 days were made a big enough impact, no pun intended. But I was there the very next day, shuttling, because you needed a truck to get into that area after the event.
So
Shuttling,
did it cause like major fires? Like
huge. It was pretty big, and it what it did was it basically rocked that Northern California area in relation to natural gas, it started a chain reaction of reaction,
Oh,
is the best way to put it. So because it was such a big thing for the area, and at the time it was being reported on a national and world level because it was a big event, but people have since forgotten about it. And now, of course, because of the California fires,
yep.
it's been completely forgotten about,
Hmm.
which is unfortunate because there were a lot of important lessons that came from that situation that I'm, again, intimately familiar with because I was an instructor who used to teach classes that spoke to the lessons that were learned from that event. So not only was
Wow.
I a first responder for the event and there for the 10-day restoration afterwards, which means to the layman, I was in that neighborhood servicing those people that were dealing with those tragedies
Mm. So did
and
you
the
guys have
reactions
people
that came with
die?
that.
Then did people die from that explosion?
Yeah, about 11 people died,
Wow.
including a beautiful 20-year-old um, woman, and there was an advocate for the CPUC that died, her and her daughter, who I believe was about 9 years old.
Oh
There was an
man.
older woman, so there were quite a few deaths, and it was pretty horrific, and it really rattled the neighborhood for sure. And then, of course, the ripple effect of at least I would say the Bay Area, Northern California area, in relation to natural gas. What I saw in the field as a first responder, who, again, when I say first responder, what I mean is that in the event of a gas emergency, if you come home and your house smells like natural gas, or if your carbon monoxide detector is going off, or even in a structure fire, they're going to refer to the energy company to de-energize. And in the case of a gas emergency, there are other procedures. So we're just the ones that work with fire and police to make the situation safe, or in the case of a gas or electric emergency, we would be the incident commander if it's what I call an energy emergency.
Okay.
So that was the capacity that I did in the Bay Area after this explosion, and that really shaped my training. It really shaped my perspective. I'm still in the grip of cancel culture. I'm still dealing with their attempt to erase me, and because I'm so insistent that they're not going to, it's wreaking havoc on my body. And I really don't have a choice because we're talking about my livelihood here. So, it's God has put me, the way I look at it is God has put me in a very, very unique perspective, in a very unique position. And I'm just trying to fulfill what he wants me to do because I do believe that he's I know that he's poured a lot of resources into the making of PowerGirl, and it's my responsibility. And this is something that I spoke to my guys after San Bruno, because I was the safety chair at the time and I was the one tasked to speak to it. And it was a huge responsibility for me. And because I do take safety very seriously, that what we used to say in the field, what makes safety important is that, the techs that come and, the guys that are out in PG&E climbing those poles in the middle of the winter, that is real hard work that most people cannot do. And those men don't always come home to their families
Mm.
because it is so dangerous. And so, safety, which is something, it really feels to me like in California and specifically in PG&E, we have traded an elite safety culture for a song and dance routine. And it's the saddest thing I've ever seen. So,
So after the fire, the explosion that happened, and you guys learned a whole new way of doing things, and you had to redo your safety training, and you were teaching the new things you've learned as a result of that explosion. What happened next?
well, basically, you're hitting on a really great point. The thing that changed, and this is really the point behind why I'm speaking up, the thing that changed mostly was that's really when the abuse, they turned it up to 11. and it became very focused on command and control. And it was this strange mixture of, which very unfortunate mixture actually, of the turning up the command and control to 11, and then also hiring management who do not have a traditional understanding in the job that they are supervising. So in other words, there were gentlemen who were just not, they didn't have the trades understanding of the job that we did, which is a huge scope of responsibility. And it created a clouded lens for them. They weren't able to make accurate decisions. So it was just this really weird combination of, we're going to put our boot on your neck and you're going to do what we say, but we don't really know what you're supposed to be doing. You know what I mean? So it didn't work. I'm sorry, for California first responders, the new normal started with the first California wildfire.
CEO of PG&E, Patty Poppe, has a slogan that she likes to use. She promised again and again to lead with love. But the victims of wildfires blamed on PG&E power lines, they don't feel that love. When one of them tried to talk to the CEO about the death of her granddaughter on Twitter, she got a response she did not expect. The CEO blocked her. ABC 10 reporter Brandon Brittiman has the story you'll only see on ABC 10.
All that Susie Bewley has left of her granddaughter are pictures and memories. Fela McLeod's life ended at the age of 8. She died in a pickup truck alongside her mom, Elena, trying to run from the flames of the Zog fire. Fela and Elena can't speak anymore, so Susie is determined to be their voice.
I'm not doing it to be vindictive at all. I'm doing it out of love. I'm doing it out of love for my family. I'm doing it out of love for my community.
When Susie saw this tweet from PG&E CEO Patty Poppe, she couldn't keep quiet. The tweet claimed PG&E is using every tool to make it safe from wildfire danger.
If they were actually doing safety measures, then the Zog fire would have never started.
CAL FIRE ruled a PG&E power line caused the Zog fire. In a ruling, a federal judge said PG&E committed safety violations. He found PG&E knew it had an unsafe tree near its power line. Contractors marked it back in 2018, and no one at PG&E followed up to cut it down. The tree fell on PG&E's power line in a windstorm and sparked the Zog fire. So back on Twitter, Susie replied with a picture.
All they needed to do is cut down one tree, and Fela and Elena would have still been with their family.
And then what happened?
She blocked me.
This is what Susie saw after she shared the photo. We wanted to know how Poppe squares this with her theme, #leadingwithlove. She used that in the tweet. She's used it with state regulators.
You know, I am known for leading with love.
She's used it with business groups.
But you cannot go wrong when you lead with love.
We asked Poppe how blocking a grieving grandmother exemplifies her promise to lead with love. Our messages to her on email and Twitter went unreturned.
What does that tell you?
They don't care. They really don't care.
As Shasta County prosecutors plan to file criminal charges against PG&E for the 4 deaths in the Zog fire, including Fela and Elena. They plan to do that by the 1-year anniversary of that fire, which is coming up next Monday. PG&E, which didn't comment on its CEO Twitter blocking victims, has said that it doesn't believe criminal charges are warranted in that fire.
All right, Brandon, it just keeps going on and on, doesn't it?
Never ends.
Thank you. You can watch Brandon's investigations right now by typing in firepowermoney.com.
And this new normal, they've broken the rules so hard that we can now change it to what we want it to be. To me, it's a blank slate. It's an opportunity. And I look at it that way because I'm in California and we're behind enemy lines. Like we are a cautionary tale, you know, and I don't know what it's like in Arizona, Amber, but here in California, it's frightening. And
Also, describe it for us so we understand.
It's just gotten so dark. You see it on the news, and you see it everywhere in social media. You know, you've got the drag queen story hour, which started out innocently enough, but we can see here in Eureka that it's something completely so much more grotesque than that. There's I mean, my story is a perfect example. I went from being someone who was performing at the top of their pay band, who was, a tradeswoman of renown, to being just erased. I mean, literally one day I was there and the next minute I wasn't there, and they're trying to make it like it was no big deal. I mean, look at, if they can erase somebody that was as popular and as well liked and as hardworking and as dedicated and well documented as I was, they can erase anybody. And we're watching it happen with Trump. We're watching what's happening with a former president. I mean, we are off the rails. I mean, we're way off the rails of the crazy train.
So why are they canceling you? What happened?
Yeah, a lot of blanks to fill in. So
PG&E is trying to cancel you.
Well, they're trying to cancel me from their books. Yeah. They basically, what happened was, in January of 2017, I began to experience physical symptoms of PTSD.
From the explosion,
which were like nightmares, tremors, intrusive thoughts, intrusive memories, things that before I had never experienced in my life. So at that point, I started to enlist, the very good benefits that I thought I had. Again, one of the, elite performers in the state, as the power company. You think the power company would have good benefits, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm enlisting my benefits. I'm trying to activate, a provider search to treat my PTSD, and could not get anybody to take me seriously or even hear me, for that matter, because everybody is so tuned into their script. And also at the same time trying to deal with skeleton crew. I mean, there were just multiple failures, systemic failures that happened that kind of cascaded until basically I was reaching the end. I had experienced abuse for my time at the academy. Again, their whole
physical
system,
abuse or mental abuse, or
it's I mean, look, the best way I can put it is, on the best day, it's like the best military training you can get, right? Like, maybe not Navy SEAL level, but it's boot camp. Like, they're expecting you to perform at a very high level. They have very, very high expectations. The best way I can illustrate that is, for my job title, as a gas service rep, we had, generally speaking, we were audited once a year. And when we were reviewed, as we called it, or audited, the expectation, or our cut score, was 97%. If we didn't get a 97% or better on our review, we failed that review. If we were qualifying, if we're qualifying for anything that we do on the pipeline, because it goes across state lines, we have to qualify for those jobs. If we're pipe wrapping, if we're, building risers, or I'm sorry, if we're, changing service valves, anything that we do on the pipeline, or on the, now it's actually the whole equipment, up to the meter T, you have to qualify for that job. And so for that task, any task that you do on the pipeline, you have to qualify for that task. The cut score for that qualification, which is written and performance, is 100%. If you don't get 100%, you fail that test.
wow.
So that's the level that I'm used to performing at. And I was doing great aside from the abuse. Their whole disciplinary structure, on one hand, they say it's positive discipline, but on the other hand, there's like this tacit hidden hand that if you step out of line, they will do something like this to me. I mean, I had one of my friends say, yeah, I heard they do that to people. And I'm like, wow, okay. I never in a million years thought it could happen to me, because I was one of the high performing people in the company. But what it was that I was too vocal. And I was pointing out inefficiencies, and I was not backing down, because there were certain things that were not acceptable. For instance, at the time that I really started to get vocal up here in Northern California, where I'm at now, we had a GSR, or gas service rep, who had a customer service rep riding along with him in Fresno. Somebody opened fire and killed that customer service rep.
Wow.
In the gas service truck. If it wasn't for the gas service reps training, extensive emergency response training, he could have been killed as well.
Wow.
But as it was, only the customer service rep was killed. And this is the tragedy of the story. This young man had just gotten hired onto the company, and he had a job that he would normally never be sitting in the passenger seat of a gas service truck. He was only doing that because he was trying to understand, one of the job titles that he services, so that, that's just something we do inside the company, that inter training or whatever you call it. So that was something that laid heavy on my heart. And the reason why I brought it to the director's attention on a stand down call, because every time we have a fatality in the company, there is a stand down. The whole department or whatever, they all get together and we discuss it on the phone. Well, because the reason why I spoke up was because we couldn't get our dispatcher to answer the phone. We were at night out here all alone, up here, way, way behind the Redwood Curtain. And the dispatcher, the guy who was the only guy in the company who knew where I was, what kind of work I had, what my next job was, and actually had the GPS location of where I physically was, wasn't at his desk. He wouldn't answer the phone. So
the
this is
shooting happened and he wasn't answering his phone?
Well, he was answering the phone for I don't even know. I actually know he was not answering the phone because there were several times that we were calling, and it wasn't just me complaining. I was just the one that had the most clout behind her name. We would call and he wouldn't answer. Sometimes it would go to the
This was a
answering machine.
repetitive thing this gentleman did. He was constantly not answering calls for
Repetitively,
service from
yes.
you guys. Okay.
Yes.
But was he there? Did he answer that emergency call when your coworker got shot?
Well, this is in Fresno, so we're in a different area.
Okay.
So what happened? Yeah, sorry about that. I know it's really hard to digest this story because it's there's a lot of technical pieces to it. Fresno happened in April of, I don't know, I think it was 2017, and I was up here in Eureka, and it happened down in Fresno. But when we have a death in the company, there is always a stand down call. And usually they do it by department, because that way you can get the whole, picture of how that is relative to the department. So it's just getting everybody involved. And this is what's so great about, this is the great part, the part that we need to celebrate about PG&E's culture, safety culture, is that we talked about safety all of the time. I mean, we ate, drank, and I mean, you couldn't do what we do for a living, dealing with these incredibly dangerous commodities that kill people, if you didn't do that. So that's just our culture. We talked about safety all the time. It's very second nature to us. When we had the stand downs, it was the whole department, because it was a serious situation and we needed to examine, or whatever, what are the lessons learned? What do we need to do? So this is a perfectly appropriate place for me to be bringing it up.
Okay.
Because we had so many attempts at actually dealing with it in-house. So obviously it's preferable to deal with it in-house.
Right.
But at a certain point, when you're the only night man, up in a very remote area, and you're just trying to get the person to do their job, to make it possible for you to do yours. I mean, the dispatcher is literally our one-stop shop for everything.
Mm-hmm.
And, those of us who are first responders understand this. And imagine, for those of you who are listening or watching that are first responders, imagine your dispatcher's not answering the phone.
I know. There's just no way I could fathom that. That just doesn't come
right.
into my brain.
Exactly. So that's why I was speaking up. But the problem, here's the thing, in a corrupt or in a diseased corporate culture where, it's just, the inefficiencies are not being addressed. It's not every culture has inefficiencies.
Sure.
But you got to address them. And when they're not being addressed because of, whatever, I can't even put a finger on why it doesn't get addressed. But when you have somebody coming with a very specific request and they're specifically not listening, And then instead of addressing the simple solution, which is just to have the guy do his job, you go after the person who's making the requests in the first place. That's basically what happened to me. I was speaking, and I think the reason why they came at me so hard was because I do have the experience that I have. I do have the reputation. They know that when I say something, there's weight behind it because I know what I'm talking about, not just from my own job's perspective, but when I was teaching at the academy, I was teaching across 4 lines of business. So when I came up to Humboldt County, I had a working knowledge of engineering, of of gas construction across its whole scope. Again, at a very high level, not at an expertise level. My expertise is in emergency response, but I had a high level understanding of it. So I was a really high value employee that came up here, and my supervisor who, took the bid and was happy that, I wanted to work the nights. I wasn't interested in any kind of fanfare. I just wanted to hit my truck and get to work. He was thrilled, but bankruptcy hit, and he retired. And the next thing you know, actually, this is a little bit before bankruptcy, he retired. And the next thing you know, the hammer's being dropped. They've got henchmen coming up to Eureka, causing all kinds of trouble. I mean, we were humming. We were a skeleton crew, but we were getting it done. There were just 7 of us in gas service, and we were handling the entire Humboldt, County's natural gas service territory, which is basically northern Humboldt County. And we were getting it done. And, this guy came up and just started wreaking havoc on the yard. And again, instead of addressing the guy who's wreaking havoc, they came after the person who was trying to speak for the group. I came up as a leader of the company. I came up with a very, very solid reputation. It was only appropriate for me to stand up in a leadership role and to speak for the group. But because I was doing that a little bit too close to bankruptcy time, and because I had the knowledge that I had, and because the management culture at PG&E has become so malignant, the next thing I know, I have a huge target over my head. And I was, again, remember, I was already grappling with symptoms of PTSD. So as soon as they found out that I had PTSD and that I was experiencing symptoms, I was actually trying to communicate that to them and let them know I needed just the reasonable accommodation for them to back off and let me do my job. Like, guy, I am an expert in my job. I used to teach this job. Can you please just back up and let me do my job? And it just got worse and worse and worse until finally I had an event that happened, that isn't important. What was important was that it was finally, let's just say, as we say in the PTSD world, my cup just got full and it started to overflow. And as I put it, I was no longer fit for duty because, again, I dealt with explosives for a living relative to the customer's home. So I was the person that came into your home when the carbon monoxide detector was going off and did the very complex procedure of figuring out, whether or not your house was safe by the time I left. Mm-hmm. And that is a job that the person who is doing, wouldn't you want that person to be fit for duty, Amber? If somebody came to your house, your grandmother's house, you would want that person to be fit for duty. Well, when I took a knee, as it were, that was when cancel culture began. And it hasn't stopped for 4 years. So this was all before COVID. This was just, I had finally reached the limit of my disability, which I've had since I was 9 years old. And it has never gotten in the way of me being an incredibly successful, very thriving single mom, businesswoman, whatever. I mean, I have faced every challenge head on, and the people that have worked with me know that because I exhibited that and demonstrated that, and that's all part of the record. So, but what PG&E is trying to do is not give me the workers' comp benefits that I'm owed because it was hostile work environment. It was disability discrimination. It was denial of reasonable accommodation. it was inaccessibility to the benefits that I paid for, which then crosses over into fraud.
Wow.
So I paid for those benefits, and I have still 4 years later not been able to access them. It's 4 years into this, and I still have not been treated for the symptoms of PTSD that have exacerbated so badly that I can't even leave my property or even really get into too deep of relationships with people, because they don't understand the level of injury that is involved and physical disability that's involved with PTSD. So yeah, I have the Social Security judge calling me a conspiracy theorist. I have a God of possible. He is the way maker, the miracle worker, the promise keeper. And and here we are on Amber May, telling the story that I've been, living through. And I do think it's relative to California. And I do think it's relative to the country, because we do want safe energy delivery. We absolutely do. We want safe, reliable, and affordable energy. And it's not a song and dance that's going to get us there.
We will enter a pleas of not guilty and denials of the allegation.
That was PG&E's defense attorney, Brad Bryan, this morning, entering the company's plea of not guilty to felony manslaughter and several other alleged crimes. The company faces 11 counts after its power lines started the Zog fire. The fire killed these 4 people in September of 2020. 8-year-old Fayla McLeod and her mom, Elena, died running from the fire. Their neighbors, Karen King and Ken Vossen, also died in the small community of Igo in the hills near Redding. Brandon Ritteman just back from court in Shasta County today. Are these manslaughter charges actually going to go to a jury trial?
A year or so ago when I talked to the prosecutors, they were predicting a trial was somewhat unlikely. But now it really appears that this is the course we're on. In fact, the judge set a trial date today for June 6th. So it's conceivable we're going to get to a trial as early as this summer.
We certainly are ready to go and prove our case.
And remind us why prosecutors charged PG&E with these crimes.
So the Zog fire started when a badly injured gray pine tree fell onto power lines in a windstorm. Now, PG&E doesn't dispute that part, but it does deny committing criminal negligence. Prosecutors beg to differ. PG&E has a duty to cut and trim trees that pose a threat to its lines. The DA says PG&E contractors marked this injured tree leaning over the power lines as a known hazard back in 2018. That was 2 years before it fell and started the Zog fire, but no one from the company ever followed up to have that tree cut down.
Is there any chance that PG&E could avoid trial?
Well, they could always plead guilty. That would avoid a trial. The family of Fayla and Elena McLeod certainly want them to. I talked on the phone with Susie Bewley. She's Fayla McLeod's grandma.
Own up to what you did. An 8-year-old little girl, PG&E, took her life. Everything. And I'm angry. And I don't want to see it happen again.
That was heavy. The family even deciding that they didn't want to be in court today.
Yeah, it's very emotional from them, really, really hard for them to show up in court. They've done that at times in the preliminary hearing, but not today. Now, getting back to your question, though, about the trial, a judge ruled that PG&E has to answer for these criminal charges in a jury trial. PG&E does have the right to ask for a second judge to review that ruling. PG&E's lawyers said today they're considering that. It is a high bar. PG&E would have to convince the second judge that the first judge got something wrong. That doesn't happen very often, but even just going through the motions of that appeal of the preliminary hearing could delay this case some. We don't know at this point.
Okay, Brandon, while all this is happening, we did get something out of left field.
Yeah.
You're hearing from some PG&E workers that are upset about a video that the company released to its employees just hours before this manslaughter hearing where PG&E has to enter its plea. You got a copy of it, so let's go ahead and take a look at it.
Love will keep us together.
So we obtained this internal PG&E music video made for Valentine's Day yesterday. It features CEO Patty Poppy right here and other PG&E leaders lip syncing and dancing to the 70s pop hit Love Will Keep Us Together by Captain and Tennille. One PG&E employee called this video tone deaf to release it, especially the day before the Zog case was due in court. The McLeod family felt similarly.
Very insensitive. Very, very insensitive.
Oddly enough, the lyrics of this particular song have some double meanings in the context of PG&E. For instance, the Zog fire was started by a power line PG&E chose to leave on during a windstorm while it was turning other power lines off to prevent wildfires. And the song has this line.
When the others turn you on, who'll be turning you on? I will.
One PG&E employee told us the video's slick production is what really upset him. We are told to watch expenses, he told me, and then we see the executives doing this with PG&E's resources.
And the CEO, she put out this video the day before that she's supposed to be in court to plead not guilty.
Well, Patty Poppy actually didn't come to court today. She sent a company representative to be there to enter the plea. And there was actually a surreal moment before the judge came in. The bailiff came up to PG&E's legal team to ask for the company's thumbprint because a person who was charged with these same crimes would have to give a fingerprint and a DNA sample at this point in the case. One of PG&E's lawyers said corporate entities don't have thumbprints. I checked with the court administration. He was right. PG&E actually doesn't have to give a thumbprint, just like PG&E didn't have to go to prison after it pleaded guilty to 84 manslaughter felonies in the Camp Fire that destroyed Paradise. Corporations don't have wrists to put handcuffs on, so their sentence was to pay a few $1 million fine instead of the 90 years behind bars that you or I would get for the same crimes.
All right, Brandon, thank you for the update. We appreciate it. As always, you can catch Firepower Money. All you have to do is go to abc10.com and you can catch up on all of Brandon's reporting. And we received a statement this evening from PG&E on that internal video. They say, quote, building a strong culture within PG&E is an essential part of the new company we are becoming, as CEO Patty Poppy noted when she shared the video with coworkers. I believe that love is a powerful force, and in fact, it's necessary to help us do our best work for our customers, our hometowns, and each other.
Once you were trying to get help for yourself, that's when they were trying to take the opportunity to, what were they trying to fire you too? Or
They used my disability. They leveraged my disability and the fact that they had power over whether or not I was going to get my benefits, because all of the parties, the third party companies that work for them to see me through the process. I mean, these are all women. These are all women that just wrote me off as crazy, one right after the other.
Why would they have assumed you were crazy? Like, did you do something?
Because I was complaining, because I was requesting an investigation into the abuse that ended my career. Because when I went to
really go into the abuse part, is that something you're not comfortable sharing?
Well, just, yeah, the high level, we like I said, when we basically everything was great. Just like natural gas emergency response, everything is great all the way up until the point that it's not sometimes. And that's just exactly what happened. Everything was awesome all the way up until the point that it wasn't. And the point that it, changed was, like I said, when our veteran supervisor retired up here in Eureka and we got a rookie supervisor in. He was 3 years into the company. He was full of piss and vinegar. He wasn't listening to anybody. He was a headhunter. He was disciplining us before he had even accepted the role. He was calling us and disciplining us up here in Eureka. We were running like a well-oiled machine. And he was calling us and disciplining us before he even accepted the role. So
what discipline could he give if you guys were doing all the right things?
Like expense stuff. He was like, oh, you're looking at the expense records. And he was horrible at hiding the fact that he was a headhunter. He was horrible at hiding the fact.
Everything was justifiable, right? PowerGirl?
What's that?
Everything was justifiable, wasn't it?
That he was talking about? You mean the discipline part?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, sure, we could give him that. Yeah, we'll give him that.
You, on your end.
Not on my part. No.
No, when he's saying your expense, this and that, couldn't you justify every expense that was on the expense?
I see what you're saying. The guy, well, yeah, sure. I mean, he wasn't specifically, he wasn't calling me about my expenses because I never used the P card. I never ever used their card, so they couldn't call me on expenses. But Yeah, one of the guys he was calling expenses, was it justified or not? I'm not sure because it wasn't my expense and I don't remember the details. But I do remember thinking it was highly irregular for a supervisor to be taking on the role before he's even accepted it. I mean, before his start date. I was like, this is way ahead of, and to further illustrate that, the whole first 6 weeks or so that he had taken on his role, he wasn't there. He was from Bakersfield, so he was moving up to Eureka. That's a big move. That's a whole stateside move, right? So by the time he got up there, it was his second day of actually being in his role, and he was pulling me up on positive discipline. So, you know, and again, this was after 4 months of relentless abuse from the guy who preceded him. So we had a supervisor that retired, veteran supervisor who was running the ship, no problems. You know, I mean, we had problems, but he took care of them. He was a supervisor. That's his job. Next thing we know, in October, we've got this new, or not new, he's a gas service rep. He's just a yellow card who comes up and does the temporary fill between the veteran supervisor and the regular supervisor that's going to get hired. The guy in between is the guy that basically was the meat tenderizer. He came up and he just harassed us all, not just me, but especially me. You know, he was just being a typical yellow card. Little bit of power goes to his head and he loses his mind. I mean, that was basically what was happening. I'm like, he was just getting on our case for things that were really, there was nothing. I'm like, there's nothing wrong here. Like, I don't understand why you're doing it. And we were all getting really triggered. I mean, it wasn't just me. It wasn't just me that was getting like, we were all kind of like ready to strangle the guy. So right about the time we're getting ready to strangle the guy, the other guy comes in, the new guy, the greenhorn. I mean, the other guy at least had 10 or 12 years with the company maybe. So at least he had some kind of culture under his belt. He wasn't a total greenhorn. The guy that came up in January of 2019 was a total greenhorn. I mean, 3 hours. It seemed like 3 hours with the company, 3 years with the company, which we say in our job title, that's just long enough to be dangerous. And he had never even been a gas service rep. So he came up and he, like I said, he was the guy that actually now had the power. So the in-between guy had no power, but he tenderized us. You know, he beat us up. He was sneaking up on us. He was pulling up on me all hours of the night. He pulled up on my lunch break after telling me he was gonna follow me all night. And remember, I worked by myself. So I worked by myself at night up here in Humboldt County, which was totally my wheelhouse. I loved it. Not so much when you've got a supervisor who's stalking you and you're the only one on shift and it's dark. And I'm like, I'm on lunch. And I mean, thankfully I had a witness because I had my best friend in my ear when, because I had my headphones on coming out of the grocery store when he was stalking me on my lunch. And, I'm like, what are you doing here? I'm clocked out. Go away. It's 8:00 at night. I'm taking my lunch.
That would
and
be very unsettling. I would feel very threatened if that was
right.
happening to me.
Exactly. So I made a complaint to the supervisor, who's now the new supervisor coming up, because the veteran supervisor who I had zero problem with and who actually offered me the job of supervisor when I came up there is long gone. He's long gone. And now we've got this new guy. So I complained to him about the stalking on my lunch. And that's what started the whispering behind my back. I mean, it was an S show. It was an absolute S show. And the whole reason why I went to the night shift was to get off of the radar and to just get out of everything. And it followed me, is all I can say. It followed me up here because I wouldn't stand down. I wouldn't stand down when they were going against what they claimed. I mean, the best way I can explain it, I don't know if this helps, but one of my buddies said, Christina, you're never going to get the apology you're looking for. And I was like, I am not looking for an apology. I am looking for alignment. This is not right. It's illegal. You can't take someone's money for 16 years and then not provide the insurance benefits that they're paying for. You can't use someone's disability as a way. I mean, basically, for anybody who saw the Karate Kid in the 80s, right? Ralph
Yes, we all
Macchio,
did. Yes.
they basically swept a leg. They used my injury against me. And when they realized I had PTSD, and that I was even telling them, I'm like, guys, I'm struggling with PTSD. I'm looking for help through EAP, which is the Employee Assistance Program. That's how I access my benefits. I'm telling him, I'm like, just back off. Let me do my job. Let me do my job. I know what I'm doing here. If you have a specific problem, but they wouldn't, he just kept sneaking up on us. He kept sneaking, just showing up. And I'm just like, it was really insulting for somebody after 20 years of exemplary service to have somebody sneaking up and like insinuating that he's trying to catch you doing something wrong when
Yeah. So let me see if I got this right as we wrap up today's show. So what happened was you were seeing things that were unsafe for the employees, and you were trying to bring it to the attention of the company because the whole undercurrent of the company is safety. Because that's very important when you're working in electricity and natural gas and things like that.
Absolutely.
And so they wanted to shut you up because you kept bringing it up to their attention and they weren't ready to fix it. And you weren't being quiet about the safety issues you were seeing. You end up transferring out of one area and going up to another area, and everything was fine until, well, you had some trauma with the explosion, and that really bothered you.
And the academy. The academy is where I left. So that's an important piece because most of the abuse happened at the academy. So when I went into the academy, I was tapped to go into the academy to be their first female senior technical instructor. And from what I understand, and this is the way things work in high corporate, I think what they were doing were they were either trying to make me or break me. So they they put their boot on my neck for 4 years straight. They squeezed every ounce of talent out of me. They didn't give me any credit for anything they gave me credit, but they also, were creating, let's put it this way. Anytime I complained about something, no matter how diplomatic I tried to be about it, they just tried to make it look like it was me, as that I was the problem, that I was just a complainer, instead of actually just addressing the very simple things. And look, I was the kind of person that if I was bringing a problem to the table, I was also bringing a solution. I mean, that's just who I am. I understand if you're going to complain about something, you should try to solve something, and I have a good mind for that. So I usually had some kind of solution and was always open to, to feedback. So I think what it was is not just because I moved up, but because I left the academy and basically, was like, I'm good. You guys, no offense, but not my style. Right. And the way my mentor put it was that he went into management after 5 years, which is about my same time. And he said he found out his ethics were just not flexible enough. And that's what I found. That's why I left the academy and went up to Humboldt. But once I went up to Humboldt and started to talk about the academy, specifically, not naming names, but naming issues, right? The management at the academy was so malignant, and I wasn't the only one being abused. All the talent. I mean, anybody that had any kind of talent or upwardly mobile potential was just being treated like dirt. I wasn't the only one. And a lot of us left. And again, this is why it's so important to the industry, because is it good for such a high safety critical industry to be running off anybody that shows any kind of determination, talent, competency? No, that's not a good thing. And that's how we've ended up where we're at. I mean, and that's even to say what we said before, indicative of California politics. That's exactly this command and control, abuse, ideology based world that we live in here in California. It's not working.
So what would you like to accomplish with these videos that we do and you're getting your story out? Are you just trying to bring attention, or what is your goal in all this?
That's a great question. My primary goal is to just highlight the importance of safety in these types of industries. And that could just even be just construction. We'll just do it at a high level. When you're dealing with construction, you know, the safety focus is so important. We have lost sight of that at PG&E. So I would like to refocus on that. That's my number one goal. My other thing is, you know, really, and that I would say they're not even 1 and 2, they're right side by side, is I want my story to encourage anyone who is literally feeling their world slip out from under them, that and everything come crashing down around them. And I mean, this is happening everywhere right now to everyone, where your cup is overflowing and you don't know what to do. You don't have answers. You don't have even a road in front of you because it's so foggy or so dark. You know, my number one thing is to say to you that there is an answer, because for me, the answer was Jesus. For me, thanks to my upbringing, I knew that there was an answer in Jesus. And thankfully, I'd already given my heart to him, ironically, when all this craziness started to happen. So, you know, again, I just think, that's my number one message, is that, you know, we're all going through this craziness. I am a PTSD and disability advocate. I am here to tell you that I see your injuries even when no one else does. Invisible injuries matter.
Yes.
And we are all
Jesus
suffering
is
from
the
them.
answer to those
Yes.
injuries, because he's the one who ultimately can heal where no one else can. You know, Power Girl, your story is great. You have a beautiful heart. If people want to reach out to you because maybe they're going through something, what's a great way to contact you?
The best way to keep up with me right now, because I don't have a website, I'm still fighting for my freedom, and trying to do all this at the same time. So the best way to keep up with me is I have a Telegram channel that is PowerGirl Productions Presents. You can just search for that. And then, and PowerGirl is one word. And then also I have 2 Rumble channels that I'm really, really focusing on right now. The PowerGirl Power Hour, which is all about solutions for this new normal. And then also the Keeper of the Flame, which is really, really easy to look up on Rumble. Both of them are. The Keeper of the Flame is the exposure industry. So that's where I'm really trying to parse out this 5,000-pound elephant of safe and reliable energy, you know, delivery. And also California cancel culture, and also what's going on with, you know, the new normal and how it's affecting our life. So that's the 2 main channels, Keeper of the Flame and PowerGirl Power Hour.
Well, thank you, Power Girl, for joining me today. I appreciate you so very much, and I've enjoyed getting to know you.
Amber.
Appreciate you so much. We'll see you on next time.
Okay. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
If I told you my story, you would hear hope that wouldn't let go. And if I told you my story, you would hear love that never gave up. And if I told you my story, you would hear life, but it wasn't mine. If I should speak, then let it be of the grace that is greater than all my sin, of when hear a victory over the enemy. And if I told you my story, you would hear freedom that was won for me. And if I told you my story, you would hear life overcome the grave. If I should speak, then let it be of the grace that is greater than all my sin, of when justice was served and where mercy wins, of the kindness of Jesus that draws me in. Oh, to tell you my story is to tell of Him. This is my story. This is my song, praising my Savior all the day long. This is my story. This is my song, praising my Savior all the day long. For the grace that is greater than all my sin, of when justice was served and where mercy wins, of the kindness of Jesus that draws me in. Oh, to tell you my story is to tell of the grace that is greater than all my sin, of when justice was served and where mercy wins, of the kindness of Jesus that draws me in. Oh, to tell you my story is to tell of Him. Oh, to tell you my story is to tell of Him. This is my story. This is my song, praising my Savior all the day long.